Okay, wonderful. We'll get started. Um, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Elliot Rosenberg to this Meet an Entrepreneur session with our entrepreneurship students. Mr. Rosenberg is a serial entrepreneur, most recently founding Stratys, a luxury concierge startup for entrepreneurs and executives. He received his undergraduate degree in commerce and Latin American studies from University of Virginia, during which time he founded Favela Travels, focusing on homestay and apartment rental marketplace for travelers visiting Rio's marginalized favela communities. Today, he's visiting with us from India, where he now lives with his wife and dog and runs his business from there. Uh, Thank you, Elliot, for visiting with our students today. I know it's late there, so much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Gupta. Excited to chat with everyone about the reality of entrepreneurship, starting a business as a student, like I did when I was in college, and then living the entrepreneurial life, both you know, in your own ventures and working for other startups, and also doing so outside the US in developing markets. So happy to share the unfiltered truth about all of this. And if you guys have any questions, let's chat.
Yeah, and I am glad you said unfiltered truth because that's what we want to give students in this class, both the positives and the negatives of
Yeah,
entrepreneurship. So let
yeah,
me start with
good,
the first question then. Can you tell
great.
us more about your current business? What exactly is your business?
Sure. So let's just start with the basics here in some context. I don't know, since you all would be probably ages 20 to 23, how familiar you are with this stuff, but in the US financial system, we have credit cards that don't just give you credit, so you don't have to pay your bills immediately. They also give you loyalty rewards points that come in all kinds of different currencies and can be very lucrative if you understand how to use them. And most people in the US, so just a few examples would be like Chase gives something called Ultimate Rewards Points. American Airlines gives miles. Marriott gives its Bonvoy points. So there are dozens of these in the US and worldwide. But the unique thing about the US is that the system is very lucrative because the banks can make a lot of money off of credit cards. And even for their customers who are um, financially responsible, they're paying their credit card statements in full and on time every month. So they're never paying any interest or late fees. Um, Banks can still make a lot of money off of them just on every swipe because they earn a small percentage of every transaction, and just by upselling them other products and some other revenue streams that they get. So that's the context of this whole ecosystem in the US. It's much more nuanced than that, but that's what it is at a high level. And particularly if you are a high spending person, either an individual or a business owner in the US, then there's huge opportunity for you to monetize your spending toward particularly nearly free travel using these rewards points from especially credit cards. And most people either don't realize that they can do that and that can be such an asset for them, or the way that they're doing it is very suboptimal. They earn points at a very low rate, and they use the points at a very low value. But if you can change both those things, then you can get tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000+ of nearly free travel every year. And if you want to do that, then the solutions in the market are mostly DIY, do it yourself. So it's either reading blogs, watching Instagram videos. There's a very popular a very popular blog and social media channel called The Points Guy that a lot of people follow to figure all this out. Or maybe you could take a free course or a paid course. But for busy business owners and executives, they mostly don't have time to figure this all out. It's actually quite complex. In some cases, it can feel like you need a PhD in pointsology. So what our offering does is it takes away all the complexity. Instead of do it yourself, we're done for you, where we help you set up points earning systems that just mint points and rewards and benefits in the background. And then we also plan entire luxury travel itineraries using your points for things like business class, first class flights, 5-star stays, and we handle all the travel logistics for you. So you just get to enjoy the perks of your spending, not have to worry about figuring it out on your own and potentially screwing up your credit, wasting your time, ruining your trips.
Wonderful. And Haven, Godwin has a question for you about what got you started in this business, but I'll let Haven ask. Haven?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I was just asking, like, what made you want to like start the business, or like, was there a problem that was in your life that you could solve by starting this business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started the business because it's sort of my obsession. And I learned about this stuff back in 2014. I was running a business myself, and someone told me that this whole world existed. And at that time, like I was fresh out of college, running a business where I was quite broke and also really jealous. I was running a travel business. So it was like kind of like an Airbnb, but for these specific kinds of communities in Brazil where international travelers could come stay with families in those communities. And I got really jealous of my customers. So I wanted to use what I was learning to be able to live like my customers were living, and that they were traveling the world. And I had never had that experience of waking up and every day something being new and exciting. So I took what I learned and I left that business in Brazil, turned it over to a new team, and I traveled, or I backpacked to 17 countries over 15 months in Asia. And I'd never been to Asia before. So that was like fascinating, mind-blowing for me. And in many ways, I was like solving my own problems and learning about it through trial and error. And over the years, even after I finished that trip and I came to India where I am now, and I started working for uh, another startup, I still like continued to be obsessed with this stuff and would read all about it, practice it, talk about it with friends who are also interested in it, maybe not to the degree that I was. And I just saw that people started, I had more and more questions, and the more I talked about it, the more people wanted to know and try to do it themselves. And then uh, I saw that there was really a gap here because most of what is out there is just DIY. And for the average person who could really benefit from this to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars a year for them and their families, they just don't have the bandwidth, the energy, patience to figure it out for themselves. So that's kind of what led me to start this. In many ways, it was like a long time coming. I had multiple friends and family members being like, that point stuff, you should make that your full-time thing. But I always kind of thought, this is really weird. This isn't a real business. It would be really odd and uncomfortable to have to tell people this is the thing that I do full time and make a living out of. So with the help of like a business coach, a founder coach, kind of got past those blocks in my head, and less than a year ago, maybe like 7, 8 months ago, turned it into my full-time thing.
Wonderful. Haven, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I was just saying thank you for answering my question.
Sure.
Perfect. Anderson, you had a similar question. Do you want to ask Elliot, or did he answer your question?
Well, he pretty much answered it, but I'll go ahead and ask. Where exactly did you get the idea to start a concierge service?
Like, had you seen something like this before and you said, okay, I'll model
You
like,
know, I had seen things sort of similar, but not fully what we're trying to provide. Like, there is already a market of services that do pieces of this for people, and you know, not necessarily business owners, not necessarily high spenders, but people who, for whatever reason, have accrued lots of points. It could just be like through work travel, they're employees of a company and they have to travel a lot, and they're staying in hotels and flying domestically or internationally, so they just accrue a lot of points. So there's already an industry of this that I've known about for a long time, but it just seemed like it was a piece of the solution, and there were people who needed much more. There was a customer profile that needed everything all in one place, and to go beyond that. Like, it's not enough just to book your trips, but we need to help people to set up the system so they can earn these points, and then once they've booked their trips, they need support to prepare them for their trips, and then be there in case anything goes wrong with flights getting canceled or delayed or changed, or issues with hotels not giving them the right room, and just having that live support to help them out. So I saw pieces of it, but not the real full solution, and kind of the pieces seemed to be separated, and I was like, this should all be together and we should take it a step beyond.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
right. And in this class, Elliot, we also talk about marketing, and our student Ricky Jones had a question about finding leads. So Ricky, do you want to go
Yeah.
ahead and ask the question? Ricky?
Yeah, I'm here. I gotta pull up my phone real quick.
You want
Yeah,
to
I had a
ask?
yeah, I had a question. Like, how do you find your leads? Like, how do you go about reaching out to like potential clients, finding leads?
Yeah, that's like probably top of mind right now, because we're at an early stage where we don't have a ton of inbound leads or reputation, brand recognition. So that's what I spend a lot of my time thinking about. The main things that we're trying right now are LinkedIn, and like different methods of lead generation on LinkedIn. You guys are probably not super active on LinkedIn. I would guess that a lot of you, especially those who are looking for your seniors right now and you're looking for your first jobs, you probably have profiles, but you know, LinkedIn's got the whole feed element, just like Instagram or TikTok does. It comes in kind of different content formats, but what's different about LinkedIn is, one, I think it's much, as compared to the other social platforms, it's much more about like building connection and relationships, and it has better features for chatting with people, staying in touch with people, as opposed to like a TikTok, an Instagram, a YouTube, where I think it's harder to have one-on-one interactions, and it's more about kind of like mass community building. So LinkedIn is a good channel for that, and also because the data that you have access to on LinkedIn is far richer for this kind of business, which is effectively a B2B business. Since we're targeting primarily business owners, we can just use LinkedIn free or paid tools to filter through all the LinkedIn profiles and hyper target people, either through DMs or ads. But the main things that we're doing on LinkedIn, I try to create content almost daily. That could be in the form of just pure text like Twitter or Threads. It could be short form or long form video. It could be like a carousel, like the kind of things that you have on Instagram. So I try to do that every day and then engage with the comments. There's a big thing or kind of a big trend on, especially.
Would you mind? Can you drive back to Georgia?
Sorry, I think someone's needs to go on mute. But there's a big trend on LinkedIn these days with signal-based marketing, where you look at whether someone's viewed your profile or liked your post or commented or reshared, and using that as an indication of intent, and then following up with people based on that. So we send connection requests to our target demographic. And then when people accept connections, we start DMing with them, just start like these casual conversations in the DMs, engage with people if it's through comments. And the other thing that we're looking to start doing is trying LinkedIn ads, though I've heard that they can be very expensive, but it's mostly on LinkedIn. There's some referrals that come through my network. There's one thing that we're starting up in the next few days, which is cold email, which for B2B, from my experience and what other people share, does have a lot of potential to generate leads, even if, you know, the vast majority of people are not responding to your emails. Because of the volume that's there, you can still generate good business that way. So those are the main channels. I'm coming back to the US for a bit over the summer, and I'm hoping to do some more like in-person events, conferences, meetups, those kinds of things to generate leads that way.
Wonderful. Elliot, this is a nice segue to our next question. A lot of students asked, why did you start this business living outside the US and specifically India? So
Sure.
given that your clients seem to be mostly in the US,
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
us understand your choice of location.
In many ways, it's just because India is home for me. I'm married to an Indian, and I'm probably closer with her family, her extended family, than I am with my family in the US. Cost of living in India is way cheaper, and you get way better value for your money, for your dollar here. So that definitely helps when you're bootstrapping a business in the early days. Those are like kind of personal, practical considerations. If I want to justify further, my team is based in India, so coordinating with my team is easier, though everyone's fully remote. So it's not like we're coming into an office. I haven't even met any of my team members in person ever. And beyond that, like before this, I was running a very different business. And in many ways, for me, at least personally, though it hasn't come to fruition in reality, this business is a different incarnation of my last business, which was actually helping to connect overlooked underdog Indian college graduates with careers through a few different business models or attempts at business models. That was a business that I ran for a couple years, and I shut down like right before starting this business. So I basically pivoted from that business to this business within the course of like a week, and I kept my entire team from that business and this business. And my hope is actually that we can build a high margin, fast growing business model that can allow us to, in some ways, fulfill the mission that I had before of addressing the educated youth unemployment crisis in India. But instead of trying to get other companies to hire these fresh college graduates, we hire them ourselves. We give them a way better working environment and start to their careers than most Indian companies would. And, you know, in and of ourselves, we're not going to solve the Indian unemployment crisis, but we can hopefully be a shining example to other Indian companies as to how they can recruit students from like non-premier, non-top tier college backgrounds, develop them, mentor them, and launch their careers. That's my end goal, but we're at a very nascent stage where we just have to have a business that can pay the bills.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. Last week, the Wall Street Journal had an article that said that 50% of college graduates in the US end up being underplaced compared to sort of their degree. The job that they take does not really
Yeah.
need that bachelor's or that master's degree.
Yeah.
You said your previous venture was focused on unemployment in the context of India, but it seems to
Yes.
me that the US also needs organizations like that. So how would you sort of address that?
I think it's valid. The gap in the US in terms of what skills students come with versus what the labor market demands is not as bad as what exists in India, realistically. You know, I've seen both sides, and yes, it's a problem in the US. But you know, a lot of the same skill gaps are there, albeit in different cultural contexts. Ability to like take initiative and take ownership of problems and not just like check a box, wash your hands, wipe your hands clean of something and go home. That's a rare quality in the US and pretty much anywhere you go, especially in startups. Like that's the need of the hour, that kind of mindset. And I don't think that most people, whether they're looking for their first job or their 10th job, have that mindset. Other things like the standard communication skill, and now all of the new fast evolving skills in AI are totally valid, but I think that the problem in India is far more severe than it is in the US.
Okay, wonderful. Allison had a question about how living overseas might have affected your way of running or starting a business. Allison, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Yeah, all I asked was, does living in another country such as India impact how you run your business? And if yes, how so?
Yeah, there are all kinds of like cultural considerations, legal, financial considerations that make it in some ways harder, in some ways easier to run a business in India. Like until a few months ago, like I was struggling with the visa process, and I finally just got my like Indian green card effectively that lets me more or less stay here indefinitely and do pretty much any kind of work that I want, run a business. And prior to that, it was more complicated. There are like cultural considerations in terms of what like so the Indian working context probably rooted in cultural hierarchy, colonialism is it's way different than the US. So I'll really generalize and kind of simplify, but in India, generally, employees expect to be given a set of instructions and to then execute on those instructions. Like they expect to be judged on their ability to do a list of tasks that's been given to them, as opposed to thinking freely about who is the customer, or what is my role, what is the company mission, what are my team's needs and constraints, and operating more autonomously. So it's more challenging, I think, in India than in the US to inculcate or find team members who can like think more independently and critically and operate more autonomously than in the US. So that's always a challenge. And you know, I am like essentially what we call in startups dog fooding. I am having a taste of my own medicine. So my entire team is like pretty fresh college graduates. So I've had to build those qualities in them more or less from scratch. And that takes a lot more time and handholding and like clear expectation setting and feedback than I would expect in the US. Frankly, I've never worked full time in the US. I think like, you know, I moved immediately after graduating. I probably had one internship in the US and just whatever college extracurriculars. So I can't perfectly compare, but you know, from hearing from friends who work in startups and you know, Fortune 500 companies, consultancies, banks, that seems to be the stark difference in the working culture.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Sure.
That was a good question. And Ava, you had a question about the rewards of having this business. Do you want to ask that? Ava, can you hear me? Okay. So I'll go ahead and ask Ava's question then. And that was about what have been the most rewarding aspect of having this business?
The number one thing is just being able to like talk about my obsession with others on a daily basis. Like, you know, if I were doing something else, you know, I'd probably be procrastinating on doing that thing with this instead. Like I'd be sneaking in like visits to blogs or checking my own credit card points balances or researching trips for myself and family members. So it's like I don't have to squeeze in the thing that I'm really excited about and geek out about. And instead, I get to think about it pretty much all the time. So that's awesome. Otherwise, like it's really fun to get big wins for clients and sort of blow their minds. You know, I recently like a new client that we onboarded. He runs a law firm and had points, was using them in pretty low value ways. And then within a couple weeks of working with us, we booked a $30,000 luxury vacation for him, his family, his in-laws in Turks and Caicos. And he was really excited about that. So just being able to sort of generate value and big wins out of nothing is really awesome. The other thing is seeing the growth in my team, not in like headcount numbers, but in terms of their professional development. That's ultimately what I'd like to be able to do at scale via this business, and seeing team members level up in how they think about problems and how they can execute solutions on their own is great to see. I also have one team member now who's been with me for, I don't know, a year and a half, came to me like very low on self-confidence, very unsure of himself, and we just gave him lots of responsibilities and believed in him, supported him along the way. He's applying to MBA programs now in India, and he's been going through MBA interviews with like what's effectively like the Ivy League of India, which are called Indian Institute of Management, IIMs, and he got like an incredible score on the Indian version of the GMAT, and I'm pretty confident that you know he's going to get into a top Indian MBA program, and you know I will be very happy to see him leave, not because he won't be missed, but because it's like a stepping stone for him and his career.
Wonderful. So you see yourself as a mentor to some of these young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really want to see them level up in their careers, and hopefully we can do that at a much greater scale and then inspire especially other Indian companies who frankly have terrible hiring practices, terrible working cultures, to start looking at things differently and start recruiting talent from the overlooked underdog places and investing more meaningfully in their career growth.
So, Elliot, a few days ago, we had a speaker in our class, an entrepreneur from a family business here in Alabama, and he mentioned the tension he faces or the struggle he faces between being a mentor, a friend, and at the same time a supervisor to his employees, right? You want to mentor them, perhaps want to be their friend, but you still need to get them to deliver.
Yeah.
And in his business, he said that felt like that was a challenge he had to navigate. Do you
Yeah.
feel that challenge in your business? And if yes, how do you navigate that?
To a certain extent, I think the ability to be a friend in the real sense of a friend is limited because we're fully remote. I have never met any of my team members in person. Hopefully soon we'll have some kind of team retreat where we can meet up in person, but like the opportunities for like casual hangouts are limited. Though we have like socializing team online or socializing time online. It's not the same as the in-person grab a beer type chats. So that's less of an issue for me, but like balancing their interests with the interest of the broader business and the long-term social mission that I still hold close to my heart is definitely a tension. Like a few weeks ago, I did have to effectively lay someone off, partially, we could say partially firing, partially laying off, because their skill set wasn't really matching what the company needed right now. And in some ways, I feel like that was the best decision for them as well, because I think that the other things that they had in their life, in their career going on for them would probably lead them toward a better end result, even if it would sting in the meantime. So, I had to make that tough decision, and I hope that it's for the better. It definitely hurt the team morale because we're a small team, everyone's close, and we understand like the original mission of the business. And we came from a very different business, which was very explicitly about employing and leveling up fresh college graduates. So to sort of do the apparent opposite of that is somewhat of a there's some like cognitive dissonance or potential vibes of hypocrisy. So that's more of a challenge for me, is like balancing the like what's good for the business with what's good for each individual team member, unless the friendship component.
And I guess that's a work in progress, right? You
Work in progress for sure. Haven't figured it out.
Okay. So let me ask you this. The business you're running is atypical, right? Many people think, oh, I can do it myself.
Strange.
Many people think,
Yeah.
why do I need to, outsource this aspect of the business? So when you started discussing this idea with people around you that you want to start this business, what were the reactions from people who you cared about or even other stakeholders?
I think to a certain extent, some like dismissal. I don't know to what extent, it's imagined in my head versus I can't really think of anyone being like, you're an idiot, this is stupid, you're wasting your time, you should just go get a job or do something else that's gonna like, set you up better financially. So I can't think of any moments of anyone being that explicit, but just maybe subtle comments or expressions. I think Professor Gupta would be most empathetic with this one, but the family dynamic in India is generally like tighter than it is in the US. And there's a lot of family pressure to live certain ways and do certain things. And the pressure, judgment, influence that your in-laws exert can be very stressful. So I was concerned with how my mother and father-in-law would view this, especially after having run another business, which was in many ways like unconventional and not seen as having strong potential to make money, and maybe being like dismissed as like a charity, even though it was not. It was a for-profit business. So I built that up in my head, and I was very concerned about that, but they like have welcomed it with open arms. Maybe it's just because like unintentionally I have been essentially bribing them with trips in the years till this point. You know, I fly my mother-in-law to Europe in business class at least once a year, and she's come on some luxury trips with us. So, you know, she understood it, she's fully on board. So that definitely helped.
Well, that will help in any family being able to bribe the
Oh.
mother-in-law with luxury
Yes.
trips. So I think you did well there.
Yeah.
One of our students, Jack, has a question about the challenges. Jack, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Yeah. So, what do you like, or what are the main challenges of running an international business, and what do you like most about it?
Yeah, the most apparent thing that I face right now is like time zone lag. You know, between I'm like 9.5 to 12.5 hours ahead of where most of my clients are. So just like working around schedules is tough because this is not really like a self-service option for getting started. There's no product here, it's entirely service based. So it's not like we can just have a checkout button on the website and someone enters their credit card details and pays for something. Like we need to get on calls to answer questions, help disqualify people who are not a good fit, and if they are the right fit, match them to like the right service offering for them and their business. So that coordination is difficult. The other thing is just I am not just like time zone wise distant from my customers, I am also physically distant, and like not being able to say go to conferences, go to masterminds, go to co-working spaces, give like a seminar, do one-on-one in-person networking, I think in many ways puts me at a disadvantage. So that sucks, but I, you know, can hopefully mitigate that by like these trips to the US, which can be quite exhausting. But like try to squeeze in as much of that in-person, face-to-face networking sales time as possible on these trips. And so you asked about the disadvantages. Did you ask about advantages too?
Yeah, he said, what do you like most about running an international business?
So specifically international from India is that cost of living and just overall like overhead costs are way lower than the US. So I can experiment, I can hire people, hire freelancers at much lower cost or with much lower risk because everything is 80 to 90% less costly here. That's a huge benefit of being specifically in India. You could say the same thing about like other developing world markets where cost of living and other business costs, cost of labor are lower. So that definitely helps. You know, other than that, I like that I can speak to my clients from the perspective of someone who has also been to a lot of the places that they want to go to. We mostly focus on international travel because that's where our clients can generally get the best value. And being outside of the US allows me to spend more time in really cool destinations. Like my wife and I just went on a safari in Tanzania and went to the island of Zanzibar in Tanzania, which is beautiful. We were in Oman, in the Gulf in December. We were in Portugal before that. So a lot of destinations are like easier to reach, and that gives me more credibility and like allows me to sort of like come from the perspective of having lived the experience that I'm ultimately facilitating for clients.
Interesting. An interesting question from some of our students was about your strategy. So your firm's strategy, your company strategy. So do you try to imitate your competitors? Do you try to set yourself apart from your competition? What is your strategy?
In relation to competitors, I'd say that there isn't a whole lot of direct competition for what we do. There are a lot of direct competitors who do pieces of what we do. Like it's almost commoditized to find people who do what's called award booking. You come to them and say, I have 500,000 Amex points, 300,000 Chase points, and I want to go to Europe over the summer in business class with my spouse and 3 kids. So that's a pretty commoditized service, and we more or less like match pricing for that, but there are very few competitors. It's not like a very well developed, well established market that offer more of a full service solution. So we definitely look at their pricing and their offering and see what we can learn from it, what we like, what we don't like. But I have not seen anyone in the market who offers like a long-term subscription concierge that gives unlimited bookings for an entire household or business and handles all of your travel logistics. So I'd like to say that we can differentiate on being that really true full service solution that also helps you set up these passive points, earning systems, perks, loyalty program, elite status. So we can emulate things from our competitors that we like, and then see what gaps there are in their offerings and try to provide something different. I generally don't find many conversations explicitly where we're discussing like sales conversations where I'm talking to a prospect and they're saying, well, I got this better offer through your competitor, and I'm comparing you against them. Like there are maybe indirect competitors out there. The main competitors are either one, do it yourself. And for our target market, we kind of differentiate on not having to do it yourself, or doing nothing and just sort of continuing with the status quo and not really taking advantage of these tens of thousands, $100,000+ a year that you could pretty easily be getting for yourself and your family to unlock these incredible luxury experiences at a fraction of the cost. So in that sense, I'd say our biggest competition is not really so directly similar to us.
Okay. So I guess what you're saying is there's really no other company that does the same thing as you do, which was how you said
Pieces.
position.
They do pieces of what we do, but I don't think there's really anyone who's just handling the whole thing from end to end.
Wonderful. Logan had a very interesting question about what you say on your website. Logan, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Sure, yeah. Give me 1 second. Okay, so when I opened your website, I immediately noticed that you had a unlock luxury travel at 90% off. And how are you able to stay profitable at that discount?
So we're not actually selling the travel. So going back to like the ecosystem and how it works, people are earning points from their spending mainly, or from paid travel that they do. Like you all fly American Airlines, and you'll earn some American Airlines miles on your flight, whether you used a debit card or a credit card to pay for it. But the main way that people are earning miles is points and miles is through spending on credit cards. And those points and miles can then be used to book primarily flights and hotels, some other experiences too. And generally you pay either $0 out of pocket for that, or in the case of flights, you might need to pay some taxes and like surcharges to the airlines and the airports. So like if you were to fly business class from anywhere in the US to Europe, round trip, you would probably pay about $4,000 out of pocket. If you were to use points, then you would redeem those points with the airline. Maybe you would spend in the range of 100, 150, 200,000 points, and you would have to pay some like airport taxes and fuel surcharges of $100 to $500. So that's where we get that 90% off figure. No one's actually paying us for the travel. They're paying us for the service of helping them to maximize their spending toward these luxury experiences that they get huge discounts on.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll now move on to sort of a more personal question,
Yeah,
Elliot, and that is, let's go back to your early life.
sure.
How was it when you were growing up? Family, community, school? Was there expectation, pressure, encouragement towards entrepreneurship when you were growing up? Were there people in your family or community who you looked up to as entrepreneurs? What shaped you?
Yeah, I'd say from an early age, especially my dad, what really went out of his way to teach me business lessons, entrepreneurial lessons. He had a small law firm, and like he was the only lawyer, and he had some admin staff. And then, as I grew up, he started investing in real estate, mostly like residential, some commercial real estate. And he would really actively try to involve me with everything, like showing me numbers, explaining concepts. We would go to rental properties and paint the walls, things like that. So I would get more hands-on. And, in many ways, he was the biggest influence on me. There was never really like any expectation or pressure to be an entrepreneur. If anything, I think like my parents thought that all the money they were spending on my out-of-state tuition and private school education would lead me to like a more stable corporate career. Like, I thought when I was 6 years old, this is, maniacal that I would say this in hindsight, but I would tell the grown-ups that like when I grow up, I want to be an investment banker, which I didn't really understand what that meant. I never really came close to being an investment banker. And if I were able to make it to that point, I probably would have hated it. And then, I sort of replaced investment banking with management consulting, and then didn't get very far into that recruitment process in college. Like I got an internship offer in my junior year at a boutique consulting firm, and I was pretty set to do that. But then like this other internship offer came along that was going to send me to Brazil to work in a social enterprise tech startup. And I was like, okay, let's do the more adventurous, cool thing in a place that I'm more excited about. And if it doesn't go well, then I can always come back senior year and head to, the full-time recruitment in my senior year. So like, I think the expectation was less about entrepreneurship. I think it was maybe seen as something that I could do on the side through like investing in what my dad did for himself. But the like major sort of tension points or conflicts with my family came when I was in high school, when I was 18. I got into UVA and was excited to go, but then like decided right before I graduated that I'd defer admission for a year and go to Chile in South America and volunteer teaching English to kids. And like that was something that was like pretty unheard of for them. It was just starting to become a thing for like privileged kids where I grew up, and that was a conflict in my family. But you know, I ultimately was fortunate enough to do that, and then I did go to college the year after that. And then like the real big conflict was when I was in college and I had, you know, I had skipped the consulting internship, and then I went back for my senior year after having the seed of this idea, which was a very like wild and scary, unconventional idea of living in a like drug trafficking hub in a country far away that's very misunderstood, and trying to um, generate meaningful income for families there and bring others from around the world to see the reality of life there. So that idea was like just insane. And then just like, I think my parents thought that I was really full of myself after everything they had invested into my education to tell them, yeah, I skipped the internship and I'm skipping consulting interviews, and now I don't want a job in the US. I don't want a job anywhere. I'm going to start my own thing, and it's going to be this very scary thing for you. So that was like a huge fight. And, you know, ultimately, I think they just gave up. I didn't die. Nothing bad happened to me. And, you know, I cannot say that I'm very like conventionally successful or well understood in my career path, but things are all good now. I made it out, and even though, you know, I'm, you know, in the struggle of starting a new business day to day, it's definitely more fulfilling for me than a lot of the alternatives, conventional alternatives that I've seen friends and like classmates from college go down.
Well, in our entrepreneurship class, and like many other entrepreneurship classes, we welcome people who walk the path less traveled. So we are very pleased to hear your story and how you did this unconventional business. One of our students, Ben, has a question about this unconventional business you started as a student entrepreneur, your favela travel business. So Ben, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Sure.
Yes. So to my knowledge, the favelas are one of the most dangerous places to visit. So I was just kind of wondering, what region did you see most of your demand coming from for travelers? And another question kind of attached to it is, I know you can't really guarantee your client's safety, but what measures did you take to ensure their safety?
So the statement that favelas are very dangerous is it's very nuanced. To simplify things, I can tell you that I and my customers were safer inside of the favela than they were outside in like a lot of the touristy upmarket areas. There was favelas because of favelas, if you know, see them, there have been famous movies about them, like City of God. They've been in I think probably the Fast and the Furious and some other movie series and whatnot. If you see them, you'll think, okay, this is a third world slum. And from the outside looking in, sure. But the reality is that these places are extremely resilient. There's a true sense of community when people are faced with like common struggle of just lack of recognition and lack of public services. and discrimination by government and society, they band together to protect each other and support each other. So there's very much like a sense of community and looking out for one another. And none of my customers ever had anything like safety wise bad go down for them in favelas. The real danger would be if you go to a favela as an outsider, without a resident, and you're looking to do something illegal, probably like buy drugs, or fight with gangs. And in that case, yeah, you would definitely be in danger. But the reality is that the violence that does happen within favelas is much more between rival gangs and potentially police and like what are like neither police nor gangs, but sort of like what are called militias, which are maybe like retired police who are kind of like now criminal and quasi legal. So it's very complex and nuanced. If you have like an image of drug trafficking and like gangs in your head, that's probably more influenced by like news you hear about Mexico, Central America, Colombia, where we hear these stories of just like basically like brutality, terrorism against the civilian population. That was not really a thing in Brazil, at least to the extent that you hear about it in the news in the US. And well, you know, there are definitely like PhD thesis dissertations on this topic, and I'm not the most qualified person to speak on it. I did live in the largest favela in Brazil for about a year and a half, and I ran my business from there. And I do believe that it was safer than outside. And in the end, nothing bad happened to any of my many customers. But no, we could not guarantee safety. The best thing that we could do was vet the hosts that we're working with in our network to like ensure that they had the guests' best interests in mind and would steer them away from trouble and look out for them. So that was something that we could do. And obviously, if there are any like red flags from potential customers, guests, then before we invited them to stay with us and let them pay us, then you know, just not move forward with them because they'd be too much of a liability to themselves and others. And then answering the other question about who was the main market, probably the majority of our customers came from Europe and then followed by the US, but we were there. So also the business still exists in like a different avatar since I turned it over to a different team. It's less tourism focused and more community development focused now. But during our time there, we were in many ways gearing up for the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. And the like accommodation pricing in the host cities, including where we were in Rio de Janeiro, was just out of control expensive for the most basic accommodation. So just by virtue of the fact that we're giving a huge discount on anything else while still making sure people are really centrally located, brought in a lot of people, piqued their interest, and we were then able to convert them. And we had people from, I'm pretty sure, every continent and like all walks of life. We had everything from like families with small children, like I think like a French music troupe of like preteens, teenagers come and stay. We had like elderly couples, groups of friends. It was really like the world came together to experience this magical event. If you ever have the chance to go to a FIFA World Cup, it's almost always super expensive, but if you do, it's like a beautiful like confluence of humanity that I've never seen in anywhere else in the world. And it's like a great way to like experience the world in a microcosm for a few days or weeks.
Wonderful. Elliot, before we go to the last two questions from the students, let me ask you this. For your current business, Stratys Travel, can you give us a quick idea of what your future plan is? Where do you see this business going forward? Just quickly.
Yes. Well, I think we're very much in the early stages and would like to prove out the hypothesis that small business owners and high spending individuals are ideal customers. I would love to be able to go up market. So right now we're sort of like on the cusp of high-end B2C and the lower end of B2B. But I'd like to be able to go up market to larger businesses, startups who have more, on the one hand, they have more complex spending patterns and requirements. And then they also have more complex, multifaceted travel needs. So to be able to provide more of like an enterprise consulting solution to larger B2B customers and then be able to charge higher like enterprise pricing for that would be great. I think a huge untapped opportunity would be to more or less take most of the same offering and pitch it to banks directly. So we have like Amex, Chase, Capital One, who offer these premium credit card products like a Platinum card, a Chase Sapphire Reserve, a Capital One Venture X. These are cards that have annual membership fees in the range of like $400 to $700. And these are like the creme de la creme customers for them who generate the most revenue, but they have high churn because these cards have like high annual fees. You know, it's very easy to be like, okay, the annual fee just hit for another year. I think I'm going to cancel my card. It's too hard to consider, or the math doesn't make sense. I'm not getting enough value out of this card. And like probably the most untapped value for the card holders of these cards is points and perks. And they don't understand how to maximize that. So the banks want to be able to attract and retain these very high value customers. So if we could be a B2B to C concierge solution for those premium card holders to connect with and help them get more value out of their relationships with these banks, then I think there's a good business case to pitch these banks with like a true enterprise solution where the banks pay us probably, and we provide this as like a shared service for their pool of premium customers. That's one possibility. And then to the extent that we can take a service and productize it and add tech into it to make it a lower cost, higher delight experience for the end user, that'd be awesome. But that's a long ways away.
Yeah, and if we had more time today, I would have asked you about that because that's something we talked about in class. When businesses can use the opportunity to turn a service into a product.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm also looking at the clock, and we don't have much.
Sure. Yeah. I've
So-
experienced that before from when I worked at an Indian fintech startup for 5 years, and we started with like pretty much a pure service, and we spun that service into a SaaS product that we sold to financial institutions. So yeah, that's a great topic. Maybe you can come back for another session
sir.
another time.
One of our students, Angelo, has a good question about another industry you would recommend pursuing. So Angelo, do you want to ask? Angelo, can you hear me? Okay. If not, we'll move to Luca's question. Luca, do you want to go ahead and ask your question
Yes.
about advice?
Yeah. So my question was, if you could go back and give your younger self advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
Yeah, it's like more critically examine what all the other kids are doing. Like, at least when I was in college, I I saw my classmates, my peers, and just like the overall ecosystem of, I was in the undergraduate business program at UVA. It was really like driving people toward a few career options. It was like more or less be a banker, be a management consultant of some kind, maybe like with a big 3 company or something more specialized, or work in a Fortune 500 company. And, I just, up until a pretty late stage in college, despite the fact that I had other interests, passions, experience, skills that weren't aligned with that, I just sort of blindly followed that path. And I am fortunate that I was able to kind of separate from myself from that and have the self-awareness early on that I wouldn't enjoy that, and I may not be that good at it. And yeah, sure, I could make decent money from it, but potentially just be sort of like trapped in a middle management job for the rest of my career, making, enough money to live a comfortable life, but never really having the decision-making power, the autonomy, the creativity to do anything fulfilling, and even to make a lot more money than that. So if you have the self-awareness and the courage to just question the status quo and be like, why the heck are all these kids doing the exact same thing? Does that make sense for me? And as early as possible, start exploring other options. You don't need to do what I did and like go to your parents and say, screw all the money that you paid in out-of-state tuition and private school education, and I'm gonna go live in the biggest favela in Brazil and start this insane business. That's a very extreme version of that. And you don't have to like, make those black and white, all in type decisions all at once. There are like small things that you can do to just experiment, whether it's through an internship, a course, a community, a school project, like extracurricular activity, just dabble in things. That's like one of the best things about college is just you have like a sample platter of lots of different things. You've got a crazy strong alumni network at Bama that you can tap into for pretty much anything. Like, you can get away with a lot as a student, being like, I'm exploring career options. I really admire what you super senior and successful, interesting CEO, whatever it is, are doing. Would you be open to a 20-minute chat to give me some advice about my career path? So you can just experiment, dabble, sample, and you don't need to like make these insane all-in decisions immediately, but try a lot of things in a very low risk way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elliot. I'm looking at the clock and it's ticking. I have lots of questions, but we do need to bring this session to an end. Thank you very much for your time. Would it be okay if students had questions, they reached out to you directly, or they connect on LinkedIn or anything?
Yeah. I'll just, I think you have my email address.
Yes,
so you can
I'll
share
share
my
it
email
with-
address. They can also send me connection requests on LinkedIn if they want to have like a DM chat or you want to get on a call. Happy to talk. I wish I had more people who had, I don't want to say like escaped the rat race, but like done unconventional things earlier on in my college journey. So happy to pay it forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Elliot, for giving us your time generously today. And I learned a lot, and I hope you enjoyed our interaction too. Thank you.
Sounds good. Roll Tide.
Bye-bye. Roll Tide.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Elliot.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Professor Gupta, did you want me to stay on at all for any debrief, or am I good to drop off?
Yeah, we are good to finish the session. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.